Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and thanks so much for spending some time with us. It's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, we're joined by Leigh Hurst. Leigh, thank you so much for making time today.
Thanks, Jen, for putting this out into the world. What a blessing to have this out as a tool for all of us to use. So grateful.
Oh, grateful to have you here, and it's been my pleasure. So I love to ask, and I know you, but I'm going to ask you this anyways. Tell me all about you and why you do what you do.
That's a tall order. So I own Purposeful Living in Reno, Nevada, and it started off as Awake and Aging because my background is gerontology, which is the study of aging. And the brilliant idea that I had back almost 12 years ago was to teach people how to consciously age so they didn't have to end up in nursing homes. And every day it failed me. Every day was just like going against the grain, bashed my head into bricks. It just, people did not, they would come to the door and they would say, "Can I see your anti-aging products?" And it wasn't anything to do about anti-aging. It was embracing it as we age. And I held on to that title, that word for my business, Awake and Aging, from, I think it was 2011 is when that started, until I think I let the name change in 2016. So I really held on to that tight, trying to force it into the world. And that's not where it was. Once I changed and rebranded the name to Purposeful Living, in Reno, it's known as Purposeful Living Healing Center on the sign, but it usually goes by PL or Purposeful Living. What that is it's the same idea, teaching people conscious aging, but with a different name. So it's connecting people to their purpose while guiding them to become the best version of themselves. That's what my business is. I do that so people can have better lives. That is, I am here as a guide, as a channel. And if people come in to see me about aging, they do, but I have 5-year-old clients. I have a lot of 11-year-old clients that come in. I'm like, "Caleb, why are you here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just having so much anxiety at school." And he just wants to play with some sound medicine or the sound bowls or, things to bring his vibration back into alignment. So it's a variety of helping people with so many different things, just helping them live their best lives.
So I know a little of your backstory, but if you wouldn't mind sharing, how did you get from really that journey? Because that was a journey behind the scenes.
That's so true. That's so true. So originally from Detroit, and I'm going to make it a long story short. Became friends with my teenage idol, rock star. And once I graduated college with 3 kids under my belt, he felt that I needed to move to the West Coast. And I thought, is this truly happening? My teenage idol, Brett Michaels of Poison, of course, wants me to live by him on the West Coast, and never been on an airplane, that whole story, and came out here, loved it, and said, "Brett, I'm not going to raise my children in Los Angeles. You have lost your mind." And a lot of people don't know this, but my other favorite rock star was playing in a place called Reno, Nevada. And I looked it up and I was like, that wouldn't be so bad. They brought me out here as a social worker with 180 clients under my belt that were all about death and dying. Because my main resources for myself that have been gifted to me in my life is death and dying and sex and aging. And all the other stuff was just extra blessings, right? And so a hospital paid to move me out here. I had that job as a social worker for 3 months. I failed my social work test by 3 points, and I never went back and did social work. I went and took the test one more time to see if I could pass it, missed it by 1. No. And so then, from then I got another job as an activities director for older clients that were low income, independent seniors. And I held on to that job for 13 years. I went to a retreat. When was that? 2011. And that retreat changed my life. We don't have time to get into that, but that is the teacher there took my life. I was just an average American woman having chicken tacos for dinner, watching McDreamy on ABC Thursday nights, just doing the typical, American woman thing. Went to that retreat and everything was different. Vegetarian food, vegan food, sound healing, ecstatic dance, energetic movement through the body. So learning about energy work. And that retreat changed my life. So here I am, average woman in America, that teacher introducing all those concepts to me, took my life and was like, there you go, turned it upside down and opened me back up into a world I was not familiar with. Came home, threw away my television, 2011, started my business right away. Became vegetarian at first, then vegan in 2014. And it completely changed my life. And I was so ready for it. So ready for it.
And that is like the Reader's Digest version of this, right? Like, really.
That's true.
Not to date myself with Reader's Digest, but gosh. And then here we are. So obviously you've evolved. You've created a very unique business in a community that didn't have anything like that. And now you're thriving.
It's true. And you know what it was is because my idea was so wrapped around what I had learned in college. Gerontologist. I'm going to be, a doctor of aging, gerontologist. And when you get yourself so stuck on the wheel and don't live off of the wheel, it causes all kinds of problems. We need to, like you were talking about earlier, is be in the river and being slow. Just being slow and just going with it and all the opportunities, all the wonderful opportunities that come from that.
And I say with that, like, I've been using that river reference a lot lately. It just keeps coming to me. But like, you're in the river, right? You can stand there, you can fight it and go upstream. You can stand in place and have the water just keep hitting your back along the way. Or you can kind of just go with it and see where it takes you. And many times in my own personal experience, I feel like my world's kind of gone to a place that I never, ever could have planned or thought I would be where I'm at by any means.
True. It's true. And it's so much more fun. It's so much more fun when we allow it. When people were telling me years ago, they're like, I don't understand what awaken aging means. You're the only person, Leigh, that knows what that means. And now,
Oh my gosh.
Knowing my partner, when I told him that whole story, he says, babe, oh my gosh, that was before its time. That should be a workshop, not a name of a business. It needs to be a class or something like that. Not, it doesn't deserve to be the name of a business. And I said, I guess it's just using that word awake. How often do we use, are we awake? Are we awake to know what we're consuming? Are we awake to know what medicines that we're taking? Are we practicing awareness and consciousness? And that's the idea behind awaken aging. But it was definitely before its time. Now, purposeful living, everybody wants to be connected to their purpose. Makes so much sense. Makes so much sense.
Well, and I feel like the word awake, I feel like people have been seeing now, right? After the zany world of living through COVID and trying to navigate all the craziness, I feel like now people are kind of stepping back and being like, whoa, hey, like they are awakening now more so than ever. instead of being in like that hamster wheel you were talking about and just like running nonstop, right? Sometimes
Yep.
taking that step out and saying, okay, I'm looking around. I'm really looking around now.
Well, I also, for 10 years, I've had a Facebook group called Empowering Women at Purposeful Living, right? And I, every day I pose a question in there and get the women to think. 10 years ago, it wasn't working because I would just do the memes or, post things I thought they wanted to see. But when we get people to offer up their opinion and their ideas and they share it with each other, they're all learning from things. I think it was last week I posted a question about conscious consumerism.
Mm.
That's very awakened. Conscious consumerism. You know, what intention does certain stores that you shop at, are they in alignment with your morals and values? What companies are you supporting? You know what, Jen? All people's answers are like, oh, I don't have time to learn about these companies and their, if they're in integrity, and I said, well, who are you giving your dollars to? Who are you giving your monies to? What are they supporting? And so I ended up taking a picture of this sleep flower essence that I use. And I showed them what the box looked like, what was in there, what the company's values were. On the bottom of it, it says gratitude and love for, making this purchase. And it's at Sprouts. You're probably not going to find this at a different kind of store. I won't bring anything negative or say anything negative about any place. But, how are we supporting these companies that are not in integrity, or are we even aware? And so I posed that in the women's group, and it's just, no, I need to shop where the best value is. No, I need to shop where they sell my Diet Coke on sale, and it's like, let's do our best to live awake.
Yeah. And everybody's journey is different on where they are in that awakeness, right? Like that's what's
Right.
fascinating too, because that I could imagine would be a normal conversation, but to some folks, it could be very controversial as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a really good one last week.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing all that you do. So tell me, we like to talk about money memories here. So tell me, what's a money memory, one or many, that you had as a younger person that really helped kind of evolve your relationship to money as an adult?
Oh my goodness, we definitely need we need 6 to 8 hours of that for I'm assuming everybody, but um one of the first ones is my mom and dad being married. I was probably 3, and there was always violence in the house. Not from my dad, he was the Elvis impersonator, from my mom and all the women that always showed up, and my dad not making enough money because he was the pretty boy, and he was the pretty boy, but being the pretty boy didn't pay the bills. And so my mom they finally divorced, and she went to work at General Motors in Detroit. And we had to be at the babysitters at 4 a.m. And by the time she picked us up, so I would get up and not have any breakfast. A lot of people don't know this. I'd get up and not have breakfast. I'd go to the babysitters, not have breakfast. And I'm probably in first grade, not have anything for lunch. She
Oh,
would pick us up and go home and lock herself in the bedroom for the rest of the night, and I'd have nothing for dinner.
oh,
So a lot of people don't know my food issue story. And then I did my best to try to teach myself at 5 and 6 years old how to make food, but there wasn't any food. There wasn't any food because there's probably no time for shopping, or I don't know. So I think my memory of that is my dad not being supportive to make sure that my sister was an infant, because after they got divorced, he came back over. They had a one night stand. My sister was created, and at 5 years old, she became my responsibility.
wow.
So money issues is, yes, she went and worked in the factory, but gave up her idea of being a parent, or responsibility, let's call it, because I don't know what her idea of being a parent is. Um, Responsibility of providing and mothering. In her mind, she probably thought she was by going and back then General Motors was really good money, but a lot of times, somehow we sat with no electricity in the house. It didn't matter with the fridge because there's no food in there. I literally starved to death as a kid. And now at 51, I had a doctor ask me, he did all these x-rays on my body recently. And he says, you were so malnourished, as a young person and so physically abused. He said, you at 51, you have the neck of a 75-year-old. It looks like somebody was bashing your head, and this and that. And he said, did that happen? I said, yes. Because there was violence. There was just not being taken care of as a child, and I know it's all tied in to that whole thing with money, with food, malnourishment, the physical abuse, mental abuse, things like that, and then I think the other part that I want to put in here is my mom always complaining about my dad not paying child support and going with him on the weekends or every other weekend or however it worked back then. I don't remember. And he was super excited because he had one of his Elvis suits all pressed and had the little, what are those things called? I don't want to call them buttons, studs on the Elvis suit, and he was super excited. He did it himself. He says, but I really want to show you something. And he opened up this box and there were 6 silk scarves and they're beautiful. I think they were $20 a piece. And he says, aren't these beautiful, Leanne? And I was looking at them. I don't know my age. It was probably under 10. And what he bought those for is to wear around his neck as an Elvis impersonator and give them to women. And I had the realization, wait, other people are getting these scarves that cost money that could be buying me food.
Wow.
What? And so I think if I remember, I don't know how I said it, but I brought something to his attention about that this could have paid for some sort of groceries or something, but I don't know. I think people should apply for license to see if they can be parents sometimes. You know what I mean?
For sure.
'Cause those two, I probably would not be here. If,
Ah,
but it's like the physical abuse, the, other things that were more important than food, and so here are turning vegan or vegetarian at the end of my 30s and not ever having a taste of a tomato. I didn't have a piece of watermelon until I was 38.
wow.
First tomato was, I think, 35 or 36, and then going vegan or like, I've never had beans before. So it's really interesting when you look at that background of lack of, I don't want to say motivation, lack of parenting structure, providing love,
Love.
you know? So yes, that's sort of in a strange way. I know it's probably not the typical way that people look at memories of financial, but being 51, I can look at it now and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? What was going on? It was the 70s. Things should have been, of course, I should have had known what a tomato tastes like. My partner now will give me different things at 51. And I'm like, I just had eggplant for the first time a month ago. I didn't really like it.
But at least you
Not my
tried it.
favorite. I know,
Tried
it's
it.
not so much my favorite.
Well, I mean, obviously, thank you, first off, for
Thank
being
you.
so vulnerable and sharing your journey. You've changed your narrative. I mean, that's been a huge undertaking. If you're open to sharing, like, tell me about that journey as well.
So, all of the physical abuse and lack of being taken care of, I'm like, I got to get out of here. And at one point in time, a lot of people don't know this. I ended up on the street after a beating. It was really bad. It's hard to believe that a human, especially your mom, uh, would lay that type of physical beating on you. And I had to get out of there. And I ended up on the street with somebody I was dating that was horrible, and starving to death. I was super hungry. Then I was probably 16, 17. And so at that point in time, our brains are not fully developed, of course. We're like, I have to do something. I have to do something. I need someone to help me, with this type of stuff, because no one has ever helped me. And I ran into this person, did not love him, did not even think he was attractive. He said he couldn't have babies, that he couldn't get me pregnant. This is 1989, so 17, and knew him 4 months and ended up pregnant.
Oh, gosh.
And he says, I don't know how this happened. I was hurt in a football accident. I don't. Okay. Ended up thinking in my mind, I don't want to repeat the pattern of divorce and my children growing up without a parent. And I don't want step parents and half brother, sister. I don't want what society is doing. So I will stay in this toxic, terrible marriage for 20 years. Brilliant, Leigh. Brilliant. During that time, I'm changing the narrative of this. I used to say my dad committed suicide, but now I changed the narrative. And so Jen, my dad had an incident that resulted in his death in 1992. And that sort of catapulted me. I was 20 and I grieved for nearly 4 years at the time. And I said, I got to do something different. Husband was being caught with prostitutes at the time, being put in jail. I mean, just a shit show.
My gosh.
Right? And I was like, I got to do something different. I got to do something different. 24, I had a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a newborn. And I said, I got to do something different for myself. I have to break the cycle. I have to break the pattern. And so I started college. Nobody in my family had went to college. I didn't know what I was doing. And started college, and I stuck with it for 6 years, and I earned a degree in psychology. I earned a degree in social work. Bret Michaels came into the picture, which was my angel at the time. Showed me a world I did not know. I believe that was my dad, because my dad knew I was obsessed with Bret Michaels when my dad was still on the earth. My son is named Bret Michael. He's 32. And gave me the opportunity to open my mind and see something different. Didn't mean I wanted to become a rock star or anything like that, because I already live as I'm a rock star. I think that's the energy that Bret likes about me. But he actually lined up a job for me. A lot of people don't know this, in Los Angeles as a rehab counselor for rock stars. And I was like, I have no training. I have zero training in this. None. I did not take classes for drugs, alcohol, rehab. I interviewed with them and I said, listen, guys, don't hire me. This is not my thing. I'm about aging. And then we know the story about coming out here. However, during that time of being in that marriage, having my wedding ring pawned for 20 years, always in the pawn shop, things getting shut off all the time, all this financial upheaval of just low vibration thinking. I was like, this is not where I want to be. This is not where I want to be. And so Brian, husband, divorced me and did some grieving over that. And I said, I'm an ultimate manifester. What am I doing? By having him clinging to me and being on me and around me is stopping from manifesting my dreams. I let go of that. And I was like, you know what? My whole life, I have wanted to own my own house. I have wanted to own my own house. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And so at the time, this is right around between 2008, 2010, I went without cell phone, went without cable, moved into a cheaper apartment, all these things that I had never done on my own, had some fear around it. And next thing you know, I don't know if this is too personal, but if you think back 2010, what was going on in the world.
Oh yeah, the housing market. Yeah.
Yep. I bought a condo that was 4 years old. It was worth at the time, let's see, when it was built, I think they were selling them for $269,000. Pretty sure it was 269. And then in 2010, I bought it it was 4 years old, and I bought it for $130,000 by myself. And that's where it changed, because I bought it for 130. I give too much personal information, Jen. I bought it for 130. Here we are, 2023. I think I owe 89,000 on it now. It's worth $400,000. That is pretty successful financing there. Not being taught any of those things.
And
not
you have your own place.
Have your own place. Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
So it's just turning what you've been, because you know what's right for you and what doesn't feel right and what doesn't feel in alignment. And I was like, I've always wanted to own my own home, and being married for those 20 years, it kept me from doing that because he had other intentions. So when you have two people together and wanting to manifest something, but they're not focused on the same thing, it will never happen. It will never happen. And once you get clear, you already know this, once you get clear on your vision, it has no choice but to appear.
So true. So true. So I feel like you've touched on this, but it kind of flows into it as well, but the financial infidelity side. So really leaning into that, you've shared money memories, definitely sprinkled with some infidelities, throughout what you've been sharing as well. But what's a financial infidelity that you're open to sharing that you think others could learn from?
This is super important. When you asked me, this is exactly what came up when we were talking about, what does that look like? It was at the end of my marriage, and it had already been so bad. I mean, not all the time, of course. There's some good stuff in there. But it had been very toxic. Let's call it that. And I woke up on a Saturday morning, and my son, I think he was 14 or 15, his bags were packed in the living room. Husband's things were packed in the living room. And I said, what is going on? And he says, oh, well, I haven't paid rent on this place for 3 months. We have an eviction notice. You have, I think it was less than 7 days to get out. And Brett and I have an apartment, and we're moving out. See you and the girls later, and left me high and dry.
Oh my gosh.
And I had never been on my own, right? Because, you saw the path of where it went. And I was like, what? And it was on the kitchen table of showing me that I had to get out from this rental, that he hadn't paid rent in 3 months, and I didn't know. And that's the lesson. That's the lesson, is checking out and not taking care of yourself. Because you think you finally find somebody and you think, oh, this person's, helping me and taking care of me. But it's always important to make sure that you are always well taken care of. And I was like, shit, what in the world am I going to do? I have 2 girls. I was a wreck, Jen. I was like, I called the landlord. I said, I'm so sorry, because I should have known that. I should have known, that rent wasn't being paid. How, that was bad stuff. That was a hard lesson. And I found someone to rent a little condo for me and the girls. Got the money up rather quick. She let me, make some payments and stuff. It was just, and we moved in there, fresh start, really tiny place. And that's when I made that decision. I was like, never again will I give away my power. And just laziness. It is. When you look at it, it's laziness of not taking self-responsibility. I will never give away my power again. I will never, lesson learned, universe. Thanks for knocking me on my ass. And right then, that's when I started saving and doing all those things for the house or for the condo. Right then, that's what just put me right into that. I think that's my biggest financial infidelity, is that one. All the other stuff is just little sprinkles, as you say. But that one was that one was a wake-up call.
That's huge. And I've heard that thread from others as well, right? Until you take that responsibility on yourself to, really look at the situation, because how many people, and especially stereotypically back in the day, right, in relationships, generally the male took responsibility and the females were kind of on the sideline thinking, okay, yeah, of course everything's, dotted and T's are crossed along the way. But are they and were they? And unfortunately, in cases like this is a thing.
It's huge. And so from that, guess what happened? I had 2 daughters. Maybe they didn't see all the, behind the curtains, but it was my responsibility to teach them, hey, you have your own savings account. You have your own jobs. And there's probably some in there that, not quite infidelity, but there's probably a little bit in there that I probably should not have done as a parent, as, make sure you have enough jobs to support yourself, because all of a sudden they're having 5 jobs at a time, all that type of stuff. And, I don't want them to be workaholics, but, it did teach them, self-responsibility, of taking self-responsibility for their own finances, for sure. That was a lesson for them.
I think that's a lesson for everyone just to hear again, for sure. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Gosh. So as we start to wrap things up, one thing I like to ask is, how do you utilize money differently? What are tips and tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your household?
Definitely working. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit between you and I, working with someone, different kind of coach that helped me. He says, Leigh, you are the guide and help everybody with all the things. You need to work on some of your own stuff. And he called me on it. You're going to work on men and money. And, he taught me some things of working with him about, old belief patterns, and recognizing when they come up. Oh, that's an old belief pattern that I'm not worthy of money. Oh, that's an old belief pattern that I don't know how to take care of myself. But this is really, I know I gave you a lot of heavy stuff, but this is something super light and super easy that I like to do. My calendar, when you open it up, I use a paper calendar, and the days are out with highlighters. Green means purposeful living. Green means, business, business, business. Yellow is very for self, so you kind of know where you're going. But on marks that are days that don't have anything, or like a little space on the calendar where you can fit something, I like to use these. I know it's super simple. I know it's very light, but these are just little tiny stickers that when you open that page, it says, I invest in myself. I have everything I need in life. I am financially free. And so seeing those, because you're going to use your calendar every day, hopefully, and opening your calendar up and, I am worthy of financial stability. They're little. So I guess my answer for that is affirmations. Money affirmations, reminding myself that I am not that energy of those other people.
I was creating your own beautiful journey. Like, I love that. And affirmations. Sorry to talk over you for a sec. I was going to say, affirmations are beautiful. Like, how beautiful to give yourself that self-love back.
These are just little ones that I found on Etsy. And I was like, how perfect, because they're just, I attract abundance, wealth, and prosperity. And I do. Waking up and, first thing, seeing those on your calendar, just forget about it. Easy peasy. Easy. Money flows where attention goes. And if that's your, attention, money comes to me from all areas of my life. So easy. Money flows easy.
That's good. Well, thank you for sharing everything, and thank you for making time to be here today.
Thank you for having this tool out for people. Thank you for listening, Jen.
Of course. No, my pleasure. And those of you listening or watching, hopefully you'll join us on our next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.